Test 10-9-8-7-6-5-4-3-2-1.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'd like to call this Audit and Risk Management Committee meeting to order. The clerk has confirmed that quorum is present. I'll begin with the land acknowledgement. We acknowledge the land we're meeting on is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit and the Dish with One Spoon Treaty. And I do want to thank everyone again for accommodating time to accommodate me running off and giving a keynote at the Retrofit Conference. Does anyone wish to declare a conflict of interest in accordance with the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act? Hearing none. Next item is the approval of the Audit Risk Management Committee minutes, March 24th. May I have a motion to approve the minutes? Okay, Commissioner Osborne, all in favor, show of hands, carried. Thank you, Commissioners. We will now commence with a review of the order paper. Odd. Okay, so anyway, we started with KPMG. We're getting a presentation from KPMG. Would anyone like to hold number 2, the draft financial statements? Anyone have any questions about the financial statements? Would anyone like to move that item? Okay, Commissioner Jagdeo, all in favor? Okay, the draft annual report for the TTC. Does anyone have any questions about the report? Anyone ask staff any questions about the report? This could be a very short meeting. I don't remember if I had any questions I wanted to ask about.
On the accounts receivable?
The accounts receivable, the next question is, are we going to pass the annual report? And I guess this is all stuff we've talked about over and over again. Would anyone like to move the draft annual report? Approval of the annual report. Commissioner Osborne, all in favor? Okay, this is really going to be a quick meeting. The 2024 uncollectible accounts receivable, I would like to hold this item.
Yes.
Thank you. The annual review of the TTC Safety, Health, and Environment Management System. Anyone have questions about that?
I have a quick one.
Okay, we'll get to that. And of course, the Fair Compliance Action Plan, which we're going to get a presentation. So that concludes the review of the order paper, and we've been remarkably efficient. Okay, so that concludes review of the order paper. All right, KPMG audit findings report on the consolidated financial statements for the year ending December 31st, 2024. Bruce McGregor, I understand you have someone you'd like to introduce. That's what my note says.
I think our role here is to introduce our auditors, KPMG, and I saw Kevin Travers' name up there. He's joined by his associates at KPMG and can introduce the balance of his team.
Great, thanks everyone. My name is Kevin Travers. I'm the lead engagement partner for the TTC audit. I am joined by Sal and Victoria, 2 managers involved in the audit this year.
in our testing. We move on to the next slide, please. Perfect. So unsettled accident claims. This is another significant area in terms of dollar value, as well as it's a complex estimate for TTC. So TTC does use actuarial experts. We at KPMG then use our internal specialists to help audit this. Overall, our procedures are consistent with our plan, and no exceptions were noted. And we believe that the estimate is reasonable in the context of our materiality. Moving on to employee future benefits, again, similar to unsettled accident claims, it's a significant complex estimate. There's actuarial specialists that are involved, and we just performed various procedures as highlighted on the slide. No significant differences were identified, and overall, we believe that the estimate is reasonable. And then lastly is tangible capital assets. So this is a significant caption in terms of dollar value, as well as in terms of movement during the year. So there's additions of roughly 1.26 billion, as well as depreciation of 777 million. So significant movements during the year. The slide here highlights that what we've done for our audit. Overall, no significant issues, but we did want to mention one item to the committee. During our testing of transfers between construction in progress and tangible capital assets, we did note that there were a couple of projects that were transferred in 2024, but they were actually completed in 2023. So there was a resulting depreciation expense impact from this. Management did correct it and record everything in 2024. And the depreciation impact was roughly $3.5 million. We'll speak to this on the uncorrected entry slide, but we did propose an entry here to essentially say that that depreciation expense, the 3.5 million, should have been recorded in 2023 rather than 2024. But again, non-material overall, so we're okay with keeping it uncorrected. Other than that, there were no other findings for assets. And I'm going to pass it to Victoria to continue the presentation.
Yeah, and thanks, Al. Another area of focus is related party transactions, and there are several transactions involving the City of Toronto entities. And as part of our audit procedures, we have gained an understanding of management process used to track related party balances and transactions. And we've also obtained written confirmations for significant transactions and balances, and reconcile this with TTC records to verify existence and accuracy. We have no significant findings to report for this area. Now I'm going to pass it back to Kevin to discuss the uncorrected misstatements.
Thanks, Victoria. Yeah, so just the items that are listed here, the first item relates to the item that Sal talked about earlier, the fact that there's a catch-up entry for the amortization for items that would have otherwise, amortization would have started when they were completed back in 2023. The other two items relate to items that were uncorrected or noted last year that are timing issues more than anything else again. And as you can see, when materiality is roughly $65 million, these items are all immaterial to your financial statements, both individually and when aggregated. We can go to the next slide. So with respect to control deficiencies, as noted earlier, we did not identify any significant control deficiencies in internal control as related to financial reporting. So with that, that's the formal part of the presentation we have for you today. We'd be happy to respond to any questions that you have.
Thank you. Any questions? Yes, Commissioner Osborne.
Yes, I was wondering if you could speak to us just for a minute about the climate-related risks. I'm interested in both from an accounting perspective as well as governance perspective. Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, through the chair. It's a great question. It's something we are speaking to a number of organizations about these days, and it's something that has obviously got onto the agenda of many different these days. For public companies, there are now standards that are being developed in terms of reporting those risks and what they look like. So they may fall under the category of, are there financial reporting risks? Are there other more enterprise-wide risks more generally? There are no imminent reporting standards for public sector organizations. However, the International Public Sector Accounting Standards Board is developing standards for what those reporting requirements may look like. What we are finding and recommending to most organizations is that you start to identify key metrics that you can otherwise influence that may be related to climate risk. and then develop those and ensure that they're included within your strategic planning. So within an overall organization, enterprise-wide management standpoint, what are items that are influencing the way you run your business, whether it's emissions, whether it's other types of items that are included in your long-term strategic plan, and being able to bring those back to either a committee that has overall responsibility, or whether it's even at the board level. So definitely early days from a public thinking about it, and to be including different metrics and plans and measures within your broader strategic planning.
So is there any like formal statement of this in our current financial statements?
Through the chair, I don't believe so. I will say that
Okay.
the city of Toronto has started to include their own, so just with respect to emissions, they have included a note on it for the last couple of years, but I don't believe any of the agencies have yet.
Yeah, because there's emissions, that's the sort of the obvious, but measurable stuff. And there's also the term risk is what I was quite interested in, the sort of the quantifying part of that, and the way in which we might be approaching how we disclose it all. So anyway, I was just curious because it does seem like something, I'm kind of surprised it's taken this long, to be honest. But anyway, yeah, we'll watch. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Sachs, and to the KPMG team. Thanks for putting this report together. I'd like to learn a bit more about the unsettled accident claims. I do find it interesting that it's a complex formula based on a ton of different actuarial-based inputs that go into it. So maybe you could talk just a bit about how you were able to determine whether the assumptions were reasonable. And then two, given that this is so complicated, do we expect this to be a significant finding year over year over year?
Through the chair, I'll let Sal speak to the work that was performed, but because it's a significant estimate, we reference it in terms of being significant finding. We just wanted to bring back the work that we perform in this area because of the complexity. So I would expect that we would have a slide on this continuing going forward. And Sal, if you want to speak to the work.
Yeah. So in terms of the work itself, management does use actuarial experts that takes all the data. Also within City of Toronto, as a portion of that liability does relate to City of Toronto's unsettled accident claims after 2022. So that data is all kind of put together by TTC, given to the actuary, who then runs various different formulas and obviously things that I'm not a specialist in. But we then get our actuarial specialists at KPMG to then review all that data. We then audit the internal data that is used to kind of formulate the estimates. And then we perform testing over that. So in terms of the unsettled accident thing, yeah, it'll be something that is significant going forward in terms of dollar value and estimates. But we do rely on management's actuaries and then our own internal actuaries that help to ensure that it looks reasonable from an estimate perspective and in the context of materiality as well.
Thank you both.
Commissioner Kim.
My question, you have a section here on controls. You did an assessment of internal controls over financial reporting. Does internal audit or any part of finance also carry that, or is that the only ICFR that's done by the external auditors?
Yes, our objective is to provide an audit opinion on your financial statements taken as a whole. We don't, other than, so if we encountered something as a result of performing that work that related to internal controls, we would report it back as part of this, but our scope doesn't extend towards doing any other review of your internal control environment.
And just to add on to that, our ARC department does not do any internal control work over financial reporting specifically.
So nobody internally does that work. This is all outsourced to KPMG? Okay. And then what degree of communications and information sharing do you have with the internal team?
We are in communication with internal audit. We speak with them at the beginning of the year in terms of doing our inquiries. We also, they talk to us in terms of what we may otherwise see industry-wide to ensure that their program captures those types of items as well. So there is communication that we do have throughout the year.
Okay, thank you. And so, is there also a sharing of process walkthroughs, like any kind of synergies that you guys can take advantage of between the two parties for some cost efficiencies and savings?
We don't rely upon any of the work that they perform. They do have obviously slightly different objectives, but the communications we do have during the year, including understanding the reports that they issue, help inform our risk assessment from an external reporting standpoint.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. So a few questions. In terms of the misstatements, which I understand were primarily relating to amortization, did you check to see whether the process that led to those mistakes has been corrected?
Yes, we believe those to be isolated items, and we don't expect to see those occur in the future.
Okay. The uncollected revenue from 2019 that we're going to be dealing with later, I know it's well below $65 million, but again, it suggests a process issue. Like, why are we recognizing a loss that occurred in 2019 now? Why was this never reported to us before? Did you look at the process for when to recognize uncollected revenue? Basically admit bad debts?
We do. And so certainly we look at everything in the context of the financial statement materiality, of course. But we do, if we had encountered something during the test work that we had done that suggested that there was a material problem with the system, we would have reported that. We didn't encounter anything in terms of the work that we performed.
Okay, so you did review the process for recognizing bad debts and you were content that it was adequate?
Yes.
In terms of the, picking up on the comment from Commissioner Osborne about climate risks, there is nothing on these financial statements that discloses, for example, the impact on our asset retirement obligation of heat degrading infrastructure. If we wanted to see the impact of extreme weather on our asset retirement obligations, our operating costs, state of good repair, employee health and attendance, are you in a position to help us make those clear on the financial statements? Is this something you have a process for, or is it something just for us to work with management on?
We would, anything that goes into the financial statements, we would want to have the opportunity to help review anyway. So we do have examples of, and there's none in the public sector right now, but as I said, they are coming, but we do have examples of other disclosures on risk-related items related to climate. So we'd have to work with management with respect to what those might look like.
Okay, so it is possible to have these disclosed in our financial statements, and there are precedents for how to do it?
It is possible, yes.
All right. Can you tell us more about that? Like, is this something that is extremely labor intensive? Is it extremely uncertain how to do it? Like, what would it take for us to disclose in our financial statements how extreme weather is affecting the TTC?
So anything that goes in there, we would have to be able to, they would have to be auditable, and we would have to look for examples too. So it would take some time. I don't know how much time. It would be difficult for me to say right now, because there are particular precedents in the public sector right now that we could point to, but we would be able to look for some. I know that some exist.
Could you let us know what it would cost to get some input from your firm on how to disclose that in our financial statements?
We'll do some research.
Okay, that would be great. Okay, those are my questions. Any further questions, anybody? All right, no more questions for the audit team. Does anybody have questions for staff? Commissioner Kim, any questions for staff?
I should ask. For staff. We've been without a CFO for a while. Are we just waiting until the new CEO starts?
No, we have interviews scheduled imminently. We had a bit of a pause, about a 2 to 3 week pause. The city CFO is part of the interview panel, and so he was away on vacation, and he's returning, and the interviews are scheduled now for this coming week, actually.
So there is a search.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, so my question is about disclosure effects in our financial statements. Has management done an assessment of the materiality of climate impacts on our assets, our asset retirement obligations, our operating costs, our SOGR employee? Have we done an assessment of these impacts on any of our major cost elements?
So we're still in very early days. We will be trying to leverage the recently published innovation and sustainability strategy from last year, because they did disclose some metrics and targets in relation to our emissions. But we would have to work closely with KPMG as well as with the city, because they have published some statistics already to kind of gauge how we could create a roadmap to implement a policy here.
Right. Well, my question wasn't specifically about emissions, though. Obviously, emissions are enormously important because they cumulative effect on all of us. My question was about impacts on the TTC. So we know, at least I've been told many times, that high heat degrades many kinds of equipment. Smoke creates a health issue. Flooding ruins our elevators. So there must be actual impacts on the TTC assets, operations, and liabilities that aren't disclosed to us yet. So what are you doing to gather that information and disclose it?
We're, I guess, in the beginning stages, so we have to come up with a plan to get that information, working with other departments like our environmental group, as well as our.
Well, let's start with flooding, which should be the easiest. Has anybody collected, what did it cost last year to have all those elevators flooded? Everything that got flooded, the stations that got flooded, Dundas Station closed when it was flooded. I mean, what is all it? Yeah, what are all these things costing us? Is anybody tracking it? Not yet. All right. So what do we need to do to get you to track the impacts of weather, high heat, smoke, flooding on the TTC itself from a financial point of view?
I think we need to pull the.
Okay, so.
I think that those are fair challenges. I think we have not focused on that.
Okay, all right. All right, well, when would it be reasonable, given the change in CEO, to expect a report back on how to think about that data and how to collect that data?
When's our next meeting?
September for audit.
So let's say September.
Okay.
Gives us some time.
Do you need a motion or just you make a note? Okay, wonderful. Thank you very much. Any other questions for staff? No, all good. Anyone like to move receipt of the audit report?
And I
Thank everybody.
I'm sorry. Yes, I should have done that. Thank you.
apologize for interrupting, but generally speaking, I think there's an opportunity, the audit committee wants to meet with KPMG in committee of the whole without staff present.
That's fair. Is
We used to
anybody,
ask the question, but we think it's even asking the question puts people in an awkward position.
fair enough. Does anyone wish to have an in-camera meeting with the KPMG team? I think we're good. Nice to have a nice clean report, with despite all those little red buttons that show up on the front sheet. So I think we're good. Anyone prepared to move receipt of the report? We have to approve it or just receive it? Anybody want to move approval of the report? Okay, Commissioner Jagdeo still wants to move it. All right, all in favor? Yeah, thank you very much, everybody. We appreciate it. It's a huge piece of work. And delighted to have a clean report, despite the odd misstatement page. All right, thank you very much. Okay, so okay, I think it takes us to uncollectible accounts receivable. So Commissioner Osborne, you said you had a question?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
We wrote off 635 million,
$635,252.34.
635,000. I know it actually gets under the threshold, but that's a big number. Just wondering about, so these are related to bankruptcies, am I correct about that?
I'll start. The report sets out the last 5 years write-offs, and it's very clear that typical write-off is somewhere between 12,000 and 75,000. This is an order of magnitude above that, accounted for primarily by two specific write-offs. One was a tenant renting property space, car wash, I understand, that can be elaborated on by my colleague, John. And the other was vending machine operator. I think there are some nuances associated with this. It would, because of the timing, might be associated with the onset of COVID, but I'll let.
The one you evicted in 2019.
No, I understand. That's an earlier one, yeah. I'll let John elaborate on the details of each vendor.
Yeah, that was and a car wash through the chair. There was attempts to collect. They filed for bankruptcy. I'm not sure if any legal action was taken on, Michael, if there's any on the legal side.
I know that we had traced them, so they were in default before that date, and then they've been traced. This is a property that had actually been assigned to a different owner. And it wasn't even clear the person whose name is listed was based in Canada, and then they filed for bankruptcy.
So I guess I was just curious how it got that far, because it's just because of the order of magnitude that at a certain point, they're not paying, it becomes obvious. And unless the rent's, $150,000 a month, I would have assumed that we'd be getting some alarm bells going sooner. So that's really the only question I'm wondering if we were, acting quickly enough. That's the question.
We made every attempt to collect. It's on our aging receivable. So we do everything possible to collect. But unfortunately, if we don't get a response back, we keep it on our balance sheet and then we make a final attempt. And if we've taken all action, even legal action, if there's nothing to collect, then we have to write it off.
And this continued to incur costs. TTC kept on running the lease number as the business was effectively out of business for a significant period of time. So this is a car wash at Davenport and Yonge called Church.
Oh, yeah.
There. And so it's not like you have a property that you can flip. And so as soon as they went out of business or stopped operating, it actually got taken over by Kent a little bit. And then it continues to accrue the cost, even though that business wasn't.
Okay, so that's one of the reasons why the bills are getting racked up. There is no tenant.
Yeah.
It's just the lost revenue. Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Just on the lost rent, is that the rent that was lost for that period, or was it the total value of the lease if the lease term was, say, 10 years? Because
Nancy, do you want to answer that? Do you have that response?
Yeah, this is this was all the lost revenue for that tenant for the whole time that they were a tenant with us. And just to keep in mind, to add to, I think, what we were discussing before, these amounts actually were written off already not written off, were allowed for financial statement purposes in prior years. So in those years, I know we had evicted them in 2019, but in earlier years, like 2020, 2021, 2022, where we knew that we were not collecting these amounts, we already provided for them for financial statement purposes. So we would have taken that off our financial statements. And in 2024 is the year that we officially took it off our balance sheet. So that's why you're getting it this year. And this is the total amount for that tenant. It wasn't 1 year, it was for their whole tenancy.
okay, so it's for the whole term of the lease
Correct.
period, the contract. Okay, thank you.
Have we, so how long was the lease in total? When does the lease expire, technically?
I don't have that information. Nancy, do you have that readily available?
I don't. I know that they were evicted in 2019. They operated the car wash there since 2000, actually, since the year 2000.
Okay, so probably like a 10 plus 10 maybe.
Yes.
And was there an attempt to try and fill that space with another tenant?
I don't have an answer to that. My area is the accounts receivable section. I'm not sure how the marketing and customer service team manages it, so I don't have the answer, unfortunately.
Does anybody have the answer?
Apparently not, but we'll find out.
Yeah, it would just be good to know if we at least attempted to try and fill the hole with another tenant. Granted, I acknowledge that the leasehold improvements might be quite significant, given that it's a car wash, but fair enough. Do we think this creates a precedent where if the bills are way too high, we can just get away with not paying the TTC and evade collection?
Absolutely not, no.
And I guess I had the very same kind of comments. So, first of all, the car wash site, isn't that now part of the Bloor Young construction project? Isn't the site being used for staging or something, or is it still just vacant? It's fenced, it's hoarded up.
I have not seen the actual site, so we'll have to get back to you. I don't
Okay, so nobody knows the details of this story.
know.
Nancy, I have to say that your answer made me more confused than before. So you said that the previous year's financial statements already provided that this being unlikely to be collected, but then it's being written off this year, so the entire financial impact. Was there already a bad debt provision in previous years for this amount?
Yes, there was. So in every year when we do our financial statements, we look at our allowance for bad debt. We look at what's on our accounts receivable. If there are certain accounts that we see we may not be able to collect or we're uncertain, we have to provide that. We have to provide for it. So we would write it off as sorry, I shouldn't be using the word write off. We should be providing for it in a bad debt expense, which we did so in a prior year. That AR and that bad debt expense, the two sides of it, were not officially written off our books until 2024. And that is the time where, that's why it's showing up as 2024. And that's why we're bringing this report to you today.
Right, but then there should be an offsetting reduction to the bad debt allowance account for that amount, and that's not in this report.
Correct.
Right, if you had a bad debt allowance, then this should offset it. You've known these people weren't paying for 6 years.
Correct.
I think we need more detail on this, right? It just doesn't make, the story that we're hearing today doesn't make sense. So how about we just defer this to the next meeting and come back to us more details. What happened? Why did it happen? Is there a risk of it happening again? And
Chair, maybe I could add that maybe we better explain recognizing
well,
there's 5-6 years ago.
well, exactly. Like, why are we hearing about this now and not before?
Are we missing something from like an accounting perspective? Because I guess I'm confused now too.
I think we should just defer the meeting and bring it back because I don't understand.
A referral back to staff.
We'll refer it back to staff for additional information. All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Sorry.
Okay.
Sorry. Just all those in favor.
All those in favor of deferring it, getting more information. Thank you. Passed unanimously. We would like to understand what we're approving and why. Okay, that takes us to 2.5, the annual review of the TTC Safety, Health, and Environment Management System. Anybody have questions? Commissioner Osborne.
Mine is a very minor process question. So we see this, does the full board get it? Or do they trust this committee to make sure that we have done we've looked at it?
So that's an excellent question. Thank you. We
Oh, I'm
have,
sorry. I was supposed to ask Betty Betty, did you want to present something? I'm just getting to the script. Did you want to present something? It
there was no presentation this time.
says here. Oh, well, never mind. Go ahead.
So in the past, we have brought it here first, and then it would get transmitted to the board for information. But just to, in the interest of time and knowing that this committee is well equipped to review this on behalf of the entire board, for this year, we decided just to bring it to this board, to this committee, and you'd be endorsing our approach on behalf of the board.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Jagdale.
Sorry, Betty, I could be stupid, but could you describe the difference between lost time injury rate and no lost time injury rate?
Okay, so lost time is where it incurs, so it's more than a day, so the individual would not be returning. So if the injury happened today, if they returned the next day, then it's not a lost time. But if they aren't able to return back to work the following day, then the lost time starts incurring, starting from the following day from when the incident occurred.
So then Socratically, no lost time means that they show up the same day.
They show up the next day.
Show up the next day.
That's right.
Okay.
So no time lost.
Okay, got it. Just a quick ask, next time we do this, can we just get like a small page of definitions?
Of definitions?
That would
Certainly we
be
could do.
super helpful.
Yes,
Um,
do that.
okay, got it. Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Kim? Yes, my question, Betty, is again, trying to learn from our sister organizations. We know, you probably know that Toronto Hydro had that death. And the death occurred because the employees didn't follow procedures. They felt very relaxed about it. They didn't use the last step safety measure of checking whether there was live current before they stuck their hand into the 8,000 volt system. And there was a 15-step safety precaution. There was a 14-year employee there supervising, and they still took a shortcut and somebody died. So my question really is, have you talked to the safety people at Toronto Hydro? Because they thought they had a really, 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 really good system, and they had a really good record until this guy died, and are realizing that shortcuts were being taken that weren't caught. So have you spoken with them about what they've learned and what, if anything, we ought to be doing differently?
In that particular instance, I need to find out if my staff has actually reached out to Toronto Hydro. I know we do that typically when incidents happen in sister organizations or even in the transit industry. We do outreach and determine if there's any lessons learned that we can apply in our situation. I can follow up to see if that was done in that instance, but I don't have the answer for you right now. But it is something that we do as practice to reach out and to do lessons learned.
Okay, well, if not, can I ask that we do that? Because, again, Toronto Hydro thought they had everything covered. And these folks had been trained over and over and had the device and still didn't follow. Okay, any other?
Just back to my question on no lost time injury rate. So that means that in 2024, per 100 staff members, we had, let's round it up because there are no 0.5 peoples, but let's just say there are 18 people per 100 individuals who are a part of this no lost time injury rate because of an emotional issue or an emotional crisis. What are we talking about here from emotional?
So we're talking about acute emotional event. So it could be, for instance, maybe driving a train, subway train, and being impacted by a suicide incident that happens. It could be being not the person involved in a collision, but being witness to a collision. So they're not the one actually in the collision, but then they're experiencing a traumatic effect. So those would be included in that acute emotional trauma number. So those are some examples.
Okay, so that's almost a fifth of the workforce. That's pretty substantial. And okay, fine, I accept that. Okay, thank you.
Follow up on that. How does that compare with other transit systems?
I think they're experiencing the same thing. I don't have the actual breakdown of their injuries, but I know that they are experiencing similar types of events that we are, especially the fact that we are very front-facing in terms of the roles that our operators are in. So whether that is, driving a train and witnessing a contact with the train, or being out there on the surface and being witness to collisions that are happening on the street. So there's a number of different scenarios like that, which I would think we would be in the same, experiencing the same type of situation. We can go back and get that actual, detail to see the comparisons. But the other thing is sometimes we're not necessarily, in terms of the definitions we use, we have to ensure that it's comparable. So we're comparing apples to apples with respect to, we're calling it this an acute emotional event. And to Fenton's point, there's definitions that we follow of what is included in that grouping and category. So as long as we're comparing apples to apples, we can certainly check with others to see where they fit in.
Right, what we're trying to figure out is, how do we compare with our peers and what's the trend? Can you summarize the answer for us, or do you need to go back and do some more work?
Well, overall, I can say it's similar trend. What we're facing here is similar to.
We know what we're facing, but is the impact on the employee?
Yes, the same.
Comparable? And what is our trend? Is it getting better? Is it getting worse?
We're still struggling with the acute emotional events, I have to be honest. That's an area that we are still working really hard to address. We are looking at psychological health and safety. There's some recommendations in terms of doing mental health training for our employees, our leaders, things to help make our employees more resilient as well. So that's an area that we are looking to make improvements on. But to answer your question specifically, I can take it back and see if we can get more specific details for the comparison with other transit agencies.
I think it would be helpful to know the questions. How do we compare with our peers, and are we making progress? And I'm not sure what the answer is.
Would that include also things like, being on the wrong end of some verbal abuse and harassment kind of stuff as well? Okay, thanks.
But the majority are more related to, there's a number related to exposure to suicide incidents and exposure to witnessing traumatic events on the road.
What's interesting is that everyone responds differently. So I've made a point while I've been in this role, I call every operator who's been involved in a collision to ask them how they are. And some of them take it in stride. Some of them, I had one just in tears the whole time I talked to him. So they're all different. Challenge in this role compared to, which I wouldn't call a peer agency, but they're in the general industry, is that we have more public interaction than they do. So when you run subway, we would have someone who, if someone hit an individual, it's not just that operator, but it's the operator coming the other way as well. Because we have a lot of what they call train meets. So you'd have two. Both will be impacted slightly differently, but both will be impacted. So I thought where you were going was with the mental health phenomenon of more people at track level. Is this happening more often? Because it is times two. And I think the answer is yes. Can we validate that and prove that? The challenge is ours to figure out. But I think it is happening more often. It's just the reality that we're in right now. I don't know if that helps at all.
It does. Craig, what's your impression of how mental health in the operators has changed, if at all?
Or in the public with whom we interact?
I'm thinking about our TTC staff, frontline staff.
Because you're seeing it more, I think it's more deeply rooted than we've seen before. And we have good coaching for them, but still nobody knows how they're going to react until they're in that situation. And it's a more tricky one is even if it's not workplace related, but it's still tragic, as we're experiencing this Friday when we had 2 TTC employees, 3 out of their 4 kids were killed in a car accident. That impacts everybody. When they come to work, that impacts them. The 2 adults involved have not come back to work yet. How is that classified? I really don't know. It's not workplace, but it's work related in a sense. Everybody carries that to work. And you're going to see, well, there's a bunch of us going to the memorial this Friday, and there won't be a dry eye in the place, and then everyone has to go back to work.
And back to their own kids.
And back to their own kids. And a lot of the folks have kids, and that's what you think of when we go there. That's what we're going to think of. So it's a tough one, but you can't park it. Most people don't have the strength of the brain to park it, go to work and be numb to it. you carry it, unfortunately.
Through the chair, just I might add to Commissioner Osborne's question. So industry-wide, we are seeing we're exactly lockstep with the way frontline employees in transit are being treated by the traveling public, and it's not a positive trend. And so we're not out of step with Chicago, New York, other Canadian systems. So it's something that we are actively working on and dealing with, and some of it is campaigns to customers. Obviously, the supports that Greg and Betty speak about that our frontline staff receive, we get those, and the people who are interacting with customers, whether it be operators, collectors, fare inspectors especially, get increasing levels of unwanted behavior from our customers. And it is industry-wide.
That's daunting, but at least, is there anything else that staff is asking for board support on in terms of response to mental health issues in the system?
Yeah, I think the supervisors and managers and the frontline operations are doing a very good job. They're dealing with it. We do not force people back to work until they're ready. In fact, there was one, I already fanned it out saying this person absolutely is not ready to come back to work. So just no pressure. They have to be of sound mind when they step behind a steering wheel or a throttle on a train. They have the weight of a lot of people on their shoulders. They got to be inclusive mentally. So no, there's no rush back, and we provide third-party assistance that's out there. Supervisors always make sure that they are aware of it, and if they don't think of it, we encourage them to do that. So it's all there.
All right, that one, yes, of course.
Do you know offhand how many suicides were in 1 year?
Yes.
So what is that number?
So it averages anywhere from 35 to 45 per year. And that includes, so the way we define suicide incidents, it includes both actual successful suicides as well as attempts. So that number that I just mentioned includes both.
And how many employees? Because what I'm trying to get at is, I remember having to deal with something like this at one of my former employers, and we compared it to the Stats Canada data, and it was, I think at the time, the number I looked at was something like 11. The national average was 11 suicides per 100,000 people. So how many employees are at the TTC?
So the number I quoted you is suicides on our system. It's not employees, right? We're talking about suicides that are.
Okay, but what about for employees? Whether they're operating, like operational employees or those in the corporate setting?
Do you mean impacted by those?
No.
Oh, I don't think we have.
So I can say that TTC, we assume, when I was at Metrolinx, we assume 1 a month suicides outside. For comparison, Metrolinx was, 1 a week. Metrolinx is 1 a month.
That's the public.
Yes.
The employees.
Yep.
I think the question is of TTC employees that are.
There may have been the odd one, but I don't recall any
Okay, there are none?
in
Not that we're
in
aware.
years that I can recall.
Understood your.
Okay.
Okay. One last question. Looking at the initiatives, didn't see a single high priority initiative.
Yes.
So maybe you can speak to that, or maybe the lack of urgency behind some of these initiatives, but just curious to understand the rationale behind it.
Yeah.
Because I imagine that some of these could, in theory, be high
I mean,
priority.
the medium ones, you could technically move up to high. It's just the way we've defined high versus medium versus low. So the high ones are where you're actually in contravention of legislation or something to that degree. That's why we're considering it high. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's not a high priority amongst the team to get that done. It was more about related to compliance and ensuring that, we're not in any contravention and we're not putting our employees at a very high risk. But it has nothing to do with the urgency in terms of the work getting done. So you'll notice a lot of the ones that are medium are either mostly all this year, either this quarter or before the end of the year. So while there isn't anything that's noted as a high, that doesn't mean there's no urgency in getting the work done. Hope that answers that. question.
We keep having one more question, so that's fine. Aside from first of all, thank you for the work you're doing on the mental health issue. It certainly, we see the rage everywhere and the anger and the way people feel entitled to belittle anyone in public service. So appreciate the work on that. On what I hope is much more minor, hopefully easier thing to do. So I try to chat with the station operators when I get an opportunity. And what I heard from the Bathurst station, the fare collect, well, the person who used to sit in the box, I don't even know, customer service now.
Yep.
I said, what's it like being out of the box, talking to people? He said, basically, it's great all summer, but it's just so punishingly cold in the winter that they don't have warm enough clothes and they really suffer from the cold being out of the box in an open station with big open doors on three sides. Is this an issue that you're aware of? What are we doing about it?
It's not an issue that I'm aware of, but I can understand that the stations are cold outside of the booth. They're not necessarily temperature controlled, but I do know that we offer clothing vouchers to our employees. So I would expect that as part of that, they'll be able to, get whatever they need to keep warm. But we can certainly take that back to Fort and his team to ensure that that's addressed.
We all of the station attendants, anyone wearing a uniform as part of a uniform review committee, they look at the quality of the materials, where they're even, coming from, warmth. I suspect maybe they had a willing ear because they will be looked after. And if it's cold, they'll have the right uniforms. So it's not I don't think it's a case of them suggesting they're not being heard. It's just they're new into the role. But operators deal in winter all the time and they have the right clothes.
Okay, well, I don't know. I mean, I know that many of the stations, the collectors are a little more protected than they are at Bathurst. Bathurst, they're completely exposed on all sides. So I don't know if it's just Bathurst, but I did want to ask, how are you dealing with it? You're right, there's lots of people stand outside all winter.
Yeah. They have a mechanism to get the right uniforms.
All right, well.
We're pushing really hard on even the ethical supply chain management for uniforms. That's a big deal to me.
Okay.
And we're pushing that forward as well. So.
Okay.
And if I could just add through the chair, I do know Fort's not here, but I do know just we're working with him. He is focused on this issue and how do we repurpose those booths to make sure that they can act as a place of refuge for warmth or for safety, the conversation we just had. So that is an ongoing effort. So they beyond uniforms recognize the challenge. And it's something that's being worked through with that team.
Super. All right. Going once, going twice? Okay, I think we're done with questions. Anybody want to comment to this item?
Thanks for your work.
Yeah,
Thank you. These are tough reports to write. It's incredibly intensive, and thank you for continuing to be the trencher on health and safety.
Sorry, your button.
I'm not going to say it again, but
Thank you.
thank you.
If you want I just leave it on green all the time.
I know.
But anyway, no, we do appreciate that this is a really tough thing. And with the suicide a week and all of the other issues on the system.
Those are suicides, not accidents by misadventure.
We understand.
Different things.
I understand. Okay, thank you very much, everybody. Okay, so this one we have to reaffirm support. Okay, would anyone like to make the motion that we reaffirm support to continuously improving effectiveness of the TTC safety, health, and management system, identify priority safety, health, and environment issues, and developing the TTC safety, health, and environment goals and objectives as described in this report? All in favor? I'll move it. All in favor? Okay, great. Okay, we are now going to move into confidential session, which I suppose I should have waited for my lunch until then. Commissioners, I will now read the resolution to recess into confidential session. Would you, the clerk, please post the resolution? Okay, we almost had a posted resolution. Read the resolution. Well, I can't read the resolution. I'm going to move that we go into confidential session so we can talk about fair enforcement. All in favor? Okay, thank you.
I have a friend whose son Certain things I'm trying to star, I sometimes use two colors.
Perfect, thanks, John. You're live.
Okay, thank you very much. We're back live. Don't leave yet, folks. We have to now consider item 6, Fair Compliance Action Plan Update. We have considered this matter in camera. Commissioners, do you have any public questions? Commissioner Osborne? Do you have any public questions? She gone? Oh, there she is. Commissioner Osborne, do you have any public questions on item 6? Okay. Would anyone like to speak to the item in public session? Seeing none, is anyone prepared to move the staff recommendations? Okay, Commissioner Kim is moving the staff recommendations, which is that we receive the confidential attachment, authorize that the information contained in the confidential attachment remain confidential as it relates to the security of the property of the municipality or local board. All those in favor? That carries. Thank you very much, everyone. Would someone like to move to adjourn? Commissioner Osborne, all in favor? We adjourn. Thank you very much, everyone. Appreciate it.
Hey, John, take us.